The lessons for this week, we are still in those wisdom writings of the Old Testament, Proverbs chapter 1, and our accompanying psalm with that is the 19th Psalm. And then we have the first couple of paragraphs of chapter 3 of the book of James, chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. And then we have a very familiar gospel passage from Mark 8, 27 to 38. Let's get to it, shall we? The Proverbs passage, it comes from chapter 1, and we are spending a few weeks in the wisdom writings of Old Testament literature. And one of the very distinctive items of the wisdom writings of the Old Testament is this personification of wisdom as a female personage. If you look at our passage in chapter 1 is verses 20 to 33. Now, overall, the book of Proverbs is geared toward the teaching the young man, teaching the boy, because that's just the way things were back then. Boys had privileges called they get to be taught. And it was something that when the wisdom writers put stuff together, they used imagery that would be, if you will, tantalizing to the boy, okay? And if you think about it, not a bad way to go to personify wisdom as the voice of a woman in that regard, right? Well, here we have it. Wisdom cries out in the street. In the squares, she raises her voice. So in life back in these days, we're talking like, I don't know, anywhere between the 8th to the 4th century BC. We don't know exactly when this stuff was written, but it could be ancient, even more ancient than that. But life in the city revolved around the hustle and bustle of the streets. No internet. No people aren't buying stuff online back then. Guess what? Everybody's out. And this is where commerce is enacted and where discourse is shared. Wisdom cries out in the street. In the squares, she raises her voice. At the busiest corner, she cries out. At the entrance of the city gates, she speaks. The city gates, this is where wise people, even kings, would sometimes post themselves and make themselves available for adjudications and settling of arguments, arbitration type stuff, right? Well, wisdom is being described as one of those elements of city life, of the hustle and bustle, of the voices that are being that are there for one to choose to listen to. Okay, listen to this. What she says: "How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing and fools hate knowledge?" Comes across a little passive-aggressive, huh? Yeah. "Give heed to my reproof. I will pour out my thoughts to you. I will make my words known to you. Because I have called and you refused, have stretched out my hand, and no one heeded. And because you have ignored all my counsel and would have none of my reproof. Okay, so yeah, we don't know. We don't know why wisdom is coming off so passive aggressive. Obviously, she feels a little bit like maybe they haven't been listening to her. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. There is a theme in Scripture that is consistent with the idea that, well, you know what? If you're not going to listen to the good sense I got to give you, then you know what? You deserve whatever calamity is going to come your way. And they don't have any problem saying it out loud. Well, here it goes. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when panic strikes you. Ha ha. When panic strikes you like a storm and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. She will laugh. Yeah, this is what you say to get people's attention. Exactly. You know the attitude of the parent that says, well, one of these days I'm going to get to say, I told you so. Then they will call upon me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but will not find me. Because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. Oh, by the way, we don't see a whole lot of covenantal language in the wisdom writings. We don't see a whole lot of emphasis on the law, the Torah, the instruction. We don't see a lot of Mosaic precepts cited. It's all about common sense and listening to words that actually make a difference. So when we see this thing where it says, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, notice that's in all caps, L-O-R-D in your translation. Yes, our translation. Why? Well, that's because the Hebrew word here is the tetragrammaton, which is the 4-consonant abbreviation for the name of God, which we typically think scholars have led us to believe that it's probably pronounced Yahweh. Not for sure. Don't ever get caught up in that stupid other way. There's one way. The old Jehovah, that was a bad idea. That was a stupid idea as far as trying to figure out how to pronounce the tetragrammaton with the wrong vowels. That's all Jehovah is. Not a good reading. Yahweh is probably more accurate. But anyway, that's what we have whenever we see the all caps word for Lord, the covenantal name for God. Mosaic covenant, that is, Sinai covenant. So, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, would have none of my counsel, and despised all my reproof, therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their way and be sated with their own devices. Yeah. Okay, so if you're not going to listen to common sense, if you're not going to listen to the wisdom I got to give you, then so guess what? You deserve what you get coming to you. That's probably kind of what she's saying here. For waywardness kills the simple, and the complacency of fools destroys them. Remember, back at the beginning, she said, what's it? Oh, how long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? this is a derision, if you will, of men, boys, young men who refuse to listen to the wise counsel of the elders. Okay, so here at the end of this retort, the voice of wisdom is now this is called an inclusio, referring to the hearers as simple again. For waywardness kills the simple, and the complacency of fools destroys them. But those who listen to me will be secure and will live at ease without dread of disaster. This is the counsel of our wisdom writings. And like I said, we are not 100% sure when it was written. It's possible that it might not have ever gotten canonized until after the exile was over. And the exile of all things could definitely be put into the category of disaster. Okay, so this is significant in that we have this presentation of the voice of wisdom as a female voice. Our book of Proverbs will again, see, this is the reason why to talk about it as being like that Solomon wrote it, it's like, it just makes no sense. Proverbs chapter 8 is again going to speak of wisdom in this female personage. In fact, this female personage speaks in the first person as wisdom. There was a Greek idea of Sophia. Sophia, that's the word that's a part of our word philosophy. Literally means wisdom. Philosophy means love of wisdom. But this female imaging of wisdom is replete in the book of Proverbs. Chapter 9 comes back to this thing of wisdom as someone who has her house. She is depicted as one who has prepared this wonderful banquet, this wonderful feast. Come, everybody, come to my house and eat. Teaching was for the boys, the men, and frequently in Proverbs, anti-wisdom is depicted as the woman, as also as a woman, but as the woman who was not of the best repute, shall we say. And so there's this thing that's set up in, if you can imagine the imagination of a young boy who is like, what do you choose? Do you choose the wise woman with the sumptuous feast, or do you choose the wicked woman and her ways and yada? This is all a part of marketing. This is a part of selling. How do you sell the message? You got to sell the message. You got to put it out there in a way that it's going to be received well. So if there's going to be a force out there that's going to pull you away from God, that's the way, and it's going to be in a female personage, and that's the wicked woman. Guess what? Wisdom's got to be just the opposite. The woman who provides something wonderful, sumptuous feast, good teaching, and yes, she will mock you. I love this. Okay, we got to move on. Psalm 19, I'm going to read it in our Book of Common Prayer version, translation. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Now, this starts out to be a psalm where it's in praise of creation, recognizing God in creation. whenever we have this word, the firmament is translates a word in Hebrew that literally means dome. And if you remember the creation story, there is this day when the dome is put in place. Remember, the creation picture is like this, the world is a giant snow globe. Kind of in that picture, this dome keeps the separate, makes this livable space, if you will, between, in the midst of the chaos, okay? The dome, the sky, it is what holds back the chaos that's threatening to come in. Okay, that's what we get with that word firmament. The firmament shows his handiwork. One day tells its tale to another, and one night imparts knowledge to another. Although they have no words or language, and their voices are not heard, their sound has gone out into all lands, and their message to the ends of the world. This is a way, a poetic way, if you will, of saying how creation speaks of who God is. In fact, some scholars will talk about creation as being the first Christ, even. Yeah, it makes sense if you think about it in terms of God's revealing God's self to humanity in the Christ, in Jesus. We have that ultimate reality of God revealing God's self. But before that, creation was that, was it not? Creation revealed who God was. This is what our psalmist is describing. Although they have no words or language and their voices are not heard, verse 4, their sound has gone out into all lands and their message to the ends of the world. In the deep has he set a pavilion for the sun. The deep is another word for the tahom. That's the one of the words from creation, the chaos. He has set a pavilion for the sun. See, it's like even in the midst of the chaos, God has created a place for the sun to shine, for light to break through. Although light is independent of creation from the creation story. Let us go on, but I digress. It comes forth like a bridegroom out of his chamber. It rejoices like a champion to run its course. If you can imagine this is a poetic way of describing when you view and you look at the sun, and it kind of looks like, oh, somebody's coming out of a room and they're going back into a room at the end, okay? This is what it looks like if you are observing it and not seeing it from a scientific, a global perspective. It goes forth from the uttermost edges of the heavens and runs about to the end of it again. Nothing is hidden from its burning heat. You can imagine, can you not? Somebody just doing nothing but staring at the sky all day, and this is an example of what you might come up with. Exactly. Verse 7. Now there's a transition of emphasis. It goes from creation to instruction. The law of the Lord is perfect. Okay. Anytime we have the word law, that's that word that we are familiar with in Hebrew called Torah. Law is an unfortunate translation because it really means more like instruction, okay, teaching, okay, the teaching of the Lord, the word law. Why do we use the word law? Because that's what Torah literally means. Torah, T-O-R-A, Torah. It literally means law, but it doesn't mean law in what we might, the legal, in the legal meaning. It's more like law in terms of like, well, that's the Lord's teaching. There is not another one. That's it, okay? The law of the Lord is perfect and revives the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure and gives wisdom to the innocent. This is a verse that does a very good job of teaching us what Hebrew parallelism in poetry is like. Notice how it's almost like it's saying the same thing twice. The law of the Lord is perfect and revives the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure and gives wisdom to the innocent. Yeah, it's like the same kind of thought, but it's expressed in different words. Verse 8, the statutes of the Lord are just and rejoice the heart. The commandment of the Lord is clear and gives light to the eyes. Don't we start to see that there is a little bit of a theme of wisdom here? This is a psalm which seems to be celebrating that when we are in wisdom, we are indeed celebrating the wisdom, the law, the teaching of the Lord. The statutes of the Lord are just and rejoice the heart. The commandment of the Lord is clear and gives light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean and endures forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. One of the things we need to keep in mind when we read these psalms that are celebrating when we're reading these psalms that are celebrating the Torah, the instruction, the Mosaic teaching, is that when Israel returned from the exile, one of the emphases of the teachers of the day came from a place that you could call, we're not going to let that happen to us again. No, we're not going to. We lost our land once. We're not going to lose it again. And so there is a doubling down, if you will, a re-emphasis, if you will, on the commandments, on the Torah, on the instruction, because the prophets had taught that why had calamity come upon Israel? Why did they get exiled? Because they didn't follow the Mosaic law. Exactly. All right. The fear of the Lord is clean, endures forever. The judgment of the Lord. Verse 10. More to be desired are they than gold, more than much fine gold. This is the commandments of the Lord. So notice the Hebrew parallelism. Frequently, the second verse is a slight intensification of the first statement. So that's why we have verse, why it reads like that. More to be desired are they than gold, much more than fine gold, sweeter far than honey in the comb. See that slight intensification? That's the nature of Hebrew poetry, the parallelism, but yet with this hint of an intensification. Verse 11, by them also is your servant enlightened, and in keeping them there is great reward. Again, right? From the perspective of, wow, we really need to make sure we get it right this time. So the emphasis is on that. Who can tell how often he offends? Cleanse me from my secret faults. Oh, yes. Yeah. My faults, I know my faults. I know a lot. But you know what? There's some things that's wrong with me that I do not do, that I am not conscious of. This is what the psalmist is saying. Cleanse me from my secret faults. Verse 13, above all, keep your servant from presumptuous sins. Let them not get dominion over me. Then shall I be whole and sound and innocent of a great offense. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. You might recall that Yeah, I say that. That's my line that I use at the beginning of my sermons, is it not? I didn't write it. In fact, I didn't even first see it in the Psalms. It was something that Dean Knisley used to use at the beginning of his sermons when I was a parishioner at the cathedral. And I liked it. And it was like, oh, I like that. I'm going to use that. So, bada bing, there you have it. We're going to move on because it's 25 minutes in and I haven't even got to the New Testament yet. The epistle reading is from James chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. Okay, now remember, in the Old Testament, we've been taking this dive into the wisdom writings, have we not? Yes. James is an example of a wisdom writing from the Christian point of view, from the Christian perspective, right? So we are now in the third week of getting some of this wisdom from James. Let's see what he has to say today. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers and sisters. Yes, you can tell that James, the epistle of James is dealing with a situation where it's like, there's some bad stuff out there and I'm trying to correct it. Just in case you ever feel like you should be someone who's teaching this stuff, you know what? You might want to tap the brakes on that one and just double check, okay? Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers and sisters, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. Now, that's a thing that my dad used to, God rest his soul, would say to me when he was trying to correct me as far as a minister and the way I was teaching and preaching the word. It was like, you know, you're going to be judged with a greater strictness, so it's more important that you get this right. And my dad's idea of what was right was his opinion of what was right, and so we didn't agree a lot. That made it for a little bit of a source of friction, shall we say. Yes, you who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For all of us make many mistakes. Anyone who makes no mistakes in speaking is perfect, able to keep the whole body in check with a bridle. Yeah, more power to you. If you can be perfect, fine, do that. If we put bits into our mouths of horses to make them obey us, we guide their whole bodies. Oh, he's diving into a metaphor whereby he's speaking about the impact of our mouth and what comes out of our mouth, our words, and how that can shape our lives. Or look at ships. Though they are so large that it takes strong winds to drive them, yet they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. Now we get, so also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great exploits. As you can see, our wisdom epistle writer here is very aware that there's some teaching going on out there that isn't really good teaching. The tongue is a small member, yet how great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire. And the tongue is a fire. This is really an interesting metaphor, is it not? Of the tongue as fire. Oh, where in Scripture have we seen tongues and fire in juxtaposition to, oh yeah, Pentecost Day, yeah? Where it says that tongues as of fire descended on the disciples. And then what happened? They were able to They were speaking in languages that people could understand, all of the great exploits of God, right? So our wisdom writer here, I think, is keying on this imagery that was common in Christian circles about tongues and fire, okay? And the tongue is a fire. The tongue is placed among our members as a world of iniquity. This writer is a little bit down on the loose lips going on. It stains the whole body, sets on fire the cycle of nature, and is itself set on fire by hell. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, this fire, this isn't a Holy Spirit fire, according to our writer. Okay. For every species of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by the human species, but no one can tame the tongue, a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. Stating all of the things that we can do with the tongue, good things and bad things. And he is bringing to the fore the idea that our tongue, even though it's so small, and the words that we say, we might not give a whole, like, you've heard the expression, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. No, not according to our writer here in James. Words are killers. That words can kill you, according to our James guy here. Look. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this ought not to be so. This is what the teacher will say. The teacher will say, let it not be. Yeah. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and brackish water? Can a fig tree, my brothers and sisters, yield olives, or a grapevine figs? Yeah, this is the obvious answer is no, right? No more can salt water yield fresh. That is the end of the reading. So our wisdom writer in James is trying to get us to see that the tongue and the words we say, okay, this is a good overall principle, okay? The words we speak create our reality. That's the reason why we need to pay attention to what it is that we spend our time talking about. You know, those conversations that we have with other people, maybe they do make a difference. Maybe all we're doing is just complaining about some baloney, something going on, right? How is our conversation creating the reality we live in? A writer of James seems to think that it makes a huge difference. I think our writer is correct. Our words create our reality. The way we speak and how we speak of things, it's huge. This is why we need to pay attention to ourselves and listen. Are we just complaining about stuff? Are we just like, oh, well, that guy, he did that again. well, I got to say something about that. And sometimes our social media goes in that same direction. Social media is the same thing as the tongue, if you think about it. It's still our voice speaking. Okay, I got to get off of that soapbox. I got to write a sermon too. So, and I haven't decided what I'm going to write about. So who knows? Let's see where we go with that one, shall we? All right. The gospel lesson is from Mark chapter 8, verses 27 to 38. Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, okay, so pause now. Whenever we are dealing with the Gospel of Mark, first of all, we want to realize Mark is the oldest gospel, the first gospel written. It's not the first in the Bible, but it is the source for Matthew that he used when he wrote his. We call Mark the second gospel, actually, because canonically it comes second. Mark is only 16 chapters long. Here we are in chapter 8. Chapter 8 is the fulcrum for people who have done, geometry, physics, the fulcrum passage, where everything starts to turn toward Jesus' eventual death on the cross. And here they are, a long ways away from Jerusalem. They're in Caesarea Philippi. And this is the beginning of that march that's going to end up in Jerusalem. Some scholars have referred to Mark as a passion story. Passion story is a story of Jesus' death and crucifixion and all that. Well, as a passion story with an extended introduction. Half of it is just introduction, and the other half is passion story. This is the beginning of that. Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others, Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him. Peter frequently answers for the crowd, and Peter's speaking is considered to be the mind think of the disciples, right? All of these answers of him being John the Baptist or Elijah or one of the prophets all fulfilled expectations that the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, had brought about. Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah," or "You are the Christ," or "You are the Anointed One." Now, this was yet another of those stock answers of who Jesus could be. You are the Messiah. Yeah, it's another one of the. Yeah, was Jesus the Messiah? Yes. Was he the anointed one, the Christ? Yes. But Peter was not answering from a place of knowledge. Peter was answering from a place of ideological correctness. And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Yeah, why? Because Jesus knew that Peter, even though he said the right words, was not actually grasping the significance or the redefining of what Messiah would be that Jesus was doing. It's true. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man, that's another way of saying that is the human one, but the Son of Man was a euphemism for Jesus. He would use it as a circumlocution, talking about himself. But it was also in the Gospel of Mark, the Son of Man is a reclaiming of a figure from Jewish apocalyptic literature, whereby he was saying, I am this glorious heavenly figure that you read about that would come, coming in a different way than you might expect. And anyway, so when he says the Son of Man, he's referring to himself, but he's also referring to this glorious heavenly apocalyptic figure. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all of this quite openly. Okay, here's what we got to get. When Peter said, you are the Messiah, Peter did not have this in mind. That's the reason why Jesus said he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. And then he began to teach about the Son of Man. And so it's like, okay, Jesus is saying, yes, I'm the Messiah, but I am not that kind of Messiah that you think that I should be. I'm not going to be that kind of Messiah. Yes, did you use the right word? Yeah, that's me. But you've got the wrong idea of what Messiah is going to be, especially the kind of Messiah that I am going to be. Look at this. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. This is why. He's rebuking Jesus because Peter had just said, hey, you're the Messiah. And Jesus just said, hey, I'm the one who's going to get killed. The two do not go together. There is no, in Peter's mind, there's no such thing as suffering Messiah. Messiah does not suffer as far as Peter is concerned. Messiah conquers. Messiah lives. Messiah, the last thing that happens to Messiah is Messiah dies. Jesus is saying Messiah is going to die. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, get behind me, Satan. By the way, get behind me isn't necessarily like a way of saying, like, get out of my way, I got things to do. No, it's more like, follow me. Instead of trying to set the way for me, I'm the teacher and you still have a lot to learn from me. So get behind me and follow me so that you can become enlightened. For you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Yeah. You are setting. So Jesus here is making a distinction between the kind of Messiah that he knows he has to be versus the Messiah that Peter thinks he should be. He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, if any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Jesus is basically saying to them, if you want to be a follower of me, guess what? You need to do the same thing that I am doing. It's not good enough to just say, oh, yeah, you go, Jesus, you do that. Woo, thank you for doing that, because I ain't doing that. Jesus is saying that if you want to be his follower, what? You got to be in the same mindset as he does. Denying himself, taking up his cross, and following him. For those who want to save their life will lose it. One of those paradigmatic things. This is kind of, if you think about it, it kind of fits in that wisdom motif of what we've been, of the themes of our readings, with the wisdom writings of the Old Testament and such. For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake and for the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation. Frequently, Jesus talked of the current times as being adulterous and sinful. Why? Because in terms of Yahweh worship, the turning to other gods was considered to be like having an adulterous relationship. This is why Jesus uses this imagery. This is consistent with the way the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, would talk of the people's infidelity to God was as though they were being adulterous, if you will. And of them, those who are ashamed of me and of my words, and those words are words of suffering, in this adulterous and sinful, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. A little bit of a tweak it, a little bit of a peek into an apocalyptic kind of a motif, if you will. Jesus is very keen on saying that if you choose to follow me, I'm not promising you, remember, I never promised you a rose garden. He's not promising you, oh yeah, life is going to be great. Everything's going to be wonderful. You're never going to have any problems. No, he doesn't say that. He just says that, in fact, you know what? You might have more problems. But it's an investment in your eternity. Mm-hmm. There's something else here I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it is. I'm a little disturbed by the fact that I'm 47 minutes in, and I need to finish this up because I tried to get it done within less than 40 minutes. Okay. All right. Well, I got a sermon to write, and it's like, I'm not sure, how can I bend this in with our writing from James and also Proverbs? Well, we'll see how that all comes out, shall we? So I hope that you are feeling enlightened by spending this time with me. I'm going to try and post these things a little bit earlier on Saturdays to help some people with that, and I'll post it again for a Sunday morning as well. But I want to make sure that people that it's available, so that people are that you're taking advantage of getting related to the scriptures of the week. I think that is one of the major values of our worship experience together, and I want to make sure that is maximized for you, shall we say. We are done for now. Until next time, Pax.